Well, this was unexpected. I didn't think we would see anything new from God of War for another couple years at least. Sony has announced a free update for Ragnarök called Valhalla, a new roguelike mode. Sony also recently announced that they're adding a roguelike mode to Last of Us Part 2. So I guess this is just something they're doing now, and it is releasing on December 12th, just 4 days from now. 4 days is not a lot of time, but it is just enough time for us to engage in some wild speculation, so let's do it. Personally, my biggest question is there actually going to be any real news story content included in this update? And the answer appears to be yes, at least a little bit. Sony has described Valhalla as an epilogue to the main story, and it appears that we're going to be exploring both Kratos' past and his future. But before we discuss that in more detail, let's just quickly run through the trailer scene by scene. We open with a lingering shot of this chair in some shallow water near a rocky, mist-laden coastline. And there is a long, regal red fabric with elaborate gold trim draped across it. I suspect that this chair could be Hlidskjalf. In Norse mythology, Hlidskjalf is essentially Odin's throne, but it's a magical throne. Whoever sits on this throne can peer into all realms and all places simultaneously, no matter how far away. So maybe Kratos is going to take a seat and see something important to his future journey. Perhaps even see the location of his next big adventure. And maybe it's just a soggy chair. As I always say, not my chair, not my problem. Moving forward, the camera pulls out to reveal Kratos and Mimir coasting by on a small boat. It's notable that Kratos is alone here. Of course, Atreus has already departed on his solo journey, but in the post-game, Kratos is accompanied by Freya, so I'm curious to learn why she didn't join him on this journey. Being the Queen of the Valkyries, she should be pretty familiar with the ins and outs of Valhalla. But maybe this is a journey that is very personal to him in some way, or maybe she was just busy, I don't know. Kratos asks Mimir if he's certain that he knows nothing about this place being Valhalla, where the DLC is set. Mimir says he doesn't know anything useful, but we, the audience, certainly know a thing or two about this setting. In Norse mythology, Valhalla is described as a majestic hall located in Asgard. Warriors who die glorious deaths in battle are allowed to enter Valhalla after death, or at least some of them. These warriors are the Einherjar, who serve as Odin's army during the events of Ragnarök. Now, Valhalla should have been destroyed along with the rest of Asgard by Surtur at the end of Ragnarök. Except maybe not, because at one point during the post-game, Freya states that Valhalla exists both within and outside of Asgard at the same time. Apparently, in the God of War mythos, Valhalla isn't just a fancy feasting hall, but instead some kind of spiritual realm that exists outside of normal physical reality, and we are going to explore whatever's left of that realm in this DLC. So what might we find there? Well, Valhalla should be the final resting place of many of the enemies Kratos has slain over the course of the past 2 games, including some big names. Like, it's possible that the souls of Thor, Baldur, Heimdall, and even Odin are here, waiting to do battle with Kratos again. And maybe not. Usually, in God of War games, when gods die, they stay dead. They don't show up in the mythological afterlife. Like, none of the Greek gods ever showed up in Hades besides Hades himself. Well, except for Kratos, he's kind of a weird exception to that rule. Anyway, moving on, in this next shot, we see Kratos on foot approaching a set of stone double doors, watched over by a massive statue of an ominous winged figure shrouded in a cloak. Golden runes glow above the doors, which apparently read, "Master Thyself." Okay, so I suspect that these doors are meant to be Valgrind, one of the legendary gates to Valhalla described in Norse mythology. The statue is most likely meant to be a Valkyrie, judging by the wings. The Valkyrie's role was to guide the souls of the dead to Valhalla, so it makes sense to find some Valkyrie iconography around here. Next, we see Kratos struggling to tear open the doors, and when he does pry them open, he falls into a veil of golden light. Next, we see a series of quick cuts through different scenes of combat. We see Kratos approaching a treasure chest, fighting a Draugr, a raider, a wyvern. He apparently dies, then comes back to life in classic roguelike gameplay fashion. He fights some more Draugr, a dark elf, more raiders, Einherjar, hellwalkers, and finally, a Cyclops. Before we talk about that Cyclops, I want to draw a little attention to the backgrounds here. Kratos appears to be battling in some kind of dream world version of locations across the 9 realms. We definitely see both Midgard and Svartalfheim, and with the Cyclops, that looks like it could be a Greek location. That last one is really interesting because the Cyclops never appeared as an enemy in either of the Norse mythology games, but they were regular enemies in all of the Greek games. This opens up a lot of possibilities. In this DLC, we could potentially face any enemy that's ever appeared in any of the games. We might even travel to dream world versions of locations from older games. And it has a lot of potential story significance too. Okay, so those words above the gate read, "Master thyself." And now we're seeing Kratos face off against enemies from his past. Also, during the trailer, Mimir asks Kratos why he's doing this, and Kratos answers that he must face this, though we don't know what this is yet. Putting 2 and 2 together, I suspect that in this DLC, Kratos is going to have to conquer his own past, master his past, and in that way ultimately master himself, which is of course essentially what he's already been doing all along. For these last 2 games, Kratos has been confronting his past, confronting his mistakes, his sins, the worst parts of himself, and it appears that this DLC is going to continue this theme, but in a much more visceral way. Instead of just confronting his memories of his past mistakes, this time around he is going to actually face some of those mistakes in battle. But this DLC is not just about Kratos' past. I think it's going to reveal something important about his future too. To learn more about that, next let's look at this blog post on the PlayStation website that accompanied the announcement of Valhalla. Most of this blog post just describes the roguelike gameplay of the new update, which does sound really cool. But it also says, God of War Ragnarok Valhalla will be an epilogue to the events of God of War Ragnarok that follows Kratos on a deeply personal and reflective journey. This journey will be deeply personal and reflective because it is a journey through his own past, to reflect on his past mistakes, who he used to be, and more importantly, who he wants to become in the future. Next, the post says, set after the decisive battle against Odin and Atreus' departure, Kratos has seen a path for himself he never thought possible before. Brought to the mysterious shores of Valhalla, accompanied only by Mimir, Kratos will enter its unknown depths to overcome trials within himself and face echoes of his past. It's interesting that this description says that Kratos was brought here. Who or what brought him here and why? And that path never thought possible in the description is referring to what he saw in the very last scene in the game. After Atreus has already gone, Kratos looks at the back of this Jotnar shrine, where he sees images representing his entire journey through the story of Ragnarok, as painted by his late wife Laufey. And beyond that, it also includes a single image of his future, depicting him as an object of worship, a god who is revered. It seems that, somehow, Kratos needs to complete these trials in Valhalla in order to reach that prophesied future. In spite of all the growth he's already undergone, there must still be something left in his past that he needs to overcome. Something he has not been forgiven for yet. And what could that be? Well, the most obvious answer would be the entire destruction of Greece back in God of War 3, an apocalyptic event that must have killed tens of thousands of people at least, a result of his former selfish and monstrous disregard for the lives of others. He hasn't really dealt with that yet. I very strongly suspect that in this DLC, we are going to get a glimpse of Kratos' next adventure, and maybe that next adventure is actually going to be a journey into his past. Maybe it's time to return home. Maybe it's time to go back to Greece, time to rebuild, time to atone for the worst of his old mistakes, so that he can truly become the god Laufey believed he could be. And maybe not. Either way, we're all going to find out here in just 4 days.